Hi, this is Leo Knight in Tellerico. I'm doing this video today as a follow-up to the video that I did around the total solar eclipse new moon in Leo in August. And I want to kind of give a little bit of an understanding of what happened and what it means and what might be coming next. So let's look at the bigger picture first. Bigger picture is since 2010, we've been moving into a new territory. Back in 1965 and 1966, Uranus was conjunct Pluto. That's two transformational planets. And those of you that were alive during the late 60s and 70s know what the fallout was from that 65-66 conjunction. Powerful revolution, an evolution of consciousness. Now Uranus and Pluto are making the first major meeting with each other, have been since 2010, a square, Uranus square Pluto. And that square lasted, as far as orb goes, which means within degree to be still pertinent, all the way through 2016, maybe a little bit into 17. So from 2010 through 2017, the next big revolutionary, evolutionary wave came in since 1965 and 1966. To finish off that square, there was the total solar eclipse new moon in Leo. So if we look at from 2010 with the Arab Spring and the Occupy movement all the way through that total solar eclipse, we get an idea of the length of time that this next wave of transformation happened. And just like Uranus conjunct Pluto in the 60s, the sound of the age of Aquarius is getting stronger and stronger now than it was back then. And of course, when you remember back then, there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of darkness, there was a lot going on that was pretty difficult. But at the same time, the powerful waves of a new world were coming in too, as people expanded their consciousness to new places, as people realized some of the injustices and inequities in our world. And now the same thing has been happening. We're seeing the injustices and inequities. We're getting a vision of what we want our new world to be, and we're all expanding in consciousness in alignment with that new world. So, during that 2010 to 2017 time period, 16-17 time period, 2014 was a turning point, because in 2014 there was a total solar eclipse. No, there was a solar eclipse happening then, but at the same time there was a cardinal grand cross that was happening. And so that kind of was another acceleration of the transformation on the way to the age of Aquarius. Now, at that total solar eclipse new moon in August, a new portal opened up. In some ways, it feels like a floodgate opened up. Take a look at the events that were happening in August. We had Charlottesville, and that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, and that showed us the degree of prejudice and bias and hatred towards certain groups that was still there. Also, there were some terrorist attacks during that time period. There was like a little bit of time in August where there were like 5, 6 of them in a row all over the world. There were natural disasters, much more powerful and plentiful than usual. There was the hurricanes. Two of them were like category 4 or 5. And they hit Texas. And they hit Puerto Rico. And destroyed large parts of those places. In fact, Puerto Rico destroyed almost the whole place. And there was an earthquake in Mexico that happened at that time too. Keep in mind that this total solar eclipse, new moon in Leo, was happening exclusively across the United States. So all of the natural disasters I just mentioned either happened in the United States or not far from it in North America and Mexico. The other event that happened during this total solar eclipse, new moon in Leo, was the unbelievably combative talk between North Korea's president, Kim Jong-un, and the United States president, Donald Trump. And it was brought to a fever pitch and to the point where so many people now are thinking that there's war coming between those two nations. As I'm speaking today, there was a mass murder last night in Las Vegas. Last I saw was like about 60 people were killed during that time period. So now we're kind of getting the fallout from what the total solar eclipse brought to us. Now it's like the fallout from that bomb, so to speak. And that will continue because this portal has opened and the floodgates have opened and the waters are coming pouring in. I think it might be good to look at things like there's an old world, and that old world has been protected by like concrete block. And each time there's a powerful astrological event, that concrete block cracks open more and more. And at this total solar eclipse new moon in Leo, it broke open in a huge way. And from that breaking open, the people that want to keep it are trying to bring and get that concrete all back together again. And they will go far with that, trying to keep it together. They'll go to the place of military and police action, which has already been happening. Look at what's been happening to our African American brothers and sisters. It's like the police and the military are going to get stronger because what they want to do is they want to keep that old concrete block from just being destroyed all the way, and they want to repair it. And the way they'll do it is by taking anything that looks like it's opening up something new outside of that block, and they're going to want to hold it under their control. At the same time that that's going on, there's a lot of chaos that happened from that opening of that block. And that will turn into anarchy. Then, out of that, those two extremes, over control and no control, there's the rest of us who are holding a center line. That center line is walking a spiritual path. That center line is walking toward the new age. That center line is keeping sanity. And we are holding that. And we need to continue holding that. Well, what will take us out of that? If we get into too much fear. Of course, a little bit of fear is normal. You know, there's pretty fearful situations that are happening. But if we get into the kind of fear where we can no longer keep our values, where we can no longer keep our center, then the fear is too much. What else takes us off track? Hatred. Anger is natural now. To be angry at the old world and the people in that old world that have prejudice and have hatred for people who have suffered for long periods of time and now are being liberated. That kind of hatred will also take us off the track. Not anger, because anger's healthy, but hatred. Other ways that we can keep on that path are through meditation, through other spiritual practices, toward healings, and by hanging around and staying with people of like mind. Doesn't mean that we're separating ourselves and putting ourselves above anyone. It means that we care about the human condition, and we care that we will survive, and we care that we are creating and opening up a whole new world, a whole new age, the age of Aquarius. Part of the process is going to be revolution. It doesn't have to be totally chaotic and out of control. It can be with thought. We need to overthrow the current administration that Donald Trump represents. And the best way to do it will be civil disobedience. When you look at the powerful transformational changers in our world, like Martin Luther King, like Gandhi, you find that civil disobedience led the way. We must move beyond this administration because, number one, it's a voice and a vote for the kind of world that we want, that we know is best, that we know we are moving into. And it also is taking away from the scene someone who could make this transition period between ages much more horrible than it has to be, at least I believe. So we need to do that and keep on our spiritual path at the same time. Now, Jupiter has been in Libra for the past year. And Jupiter on October 10th is moving into Scorpio. So that's going to intensify things more. The last time Jupiter was in Scorpio was in 1986. So you can take your life back to 1986, take the world's life back to 1986 and see what was going on. Because most of 2018 will be Jupiter in Scorpio again. And of course, Scorpio is much more intense than Libra. And what Jupiter does, it expands what it touches. So it expanded Libra before, which kept some amount of the peace, even though there was arguments and fierce things going on. At least there was some glue to peace. Now, when Jupiter goes in Scorpio, there's going to be less glue for peace and for balance. The expansion is going to be on more passion. Now, we can use that positively. Scorpio is not a bad sign at all. It's passion, it's primal instincts. All too often, those primal instincts turn into something very ugly, like war, for instance. But those primal instincts and that passion can be for what we believe in. Though that passion can be with what we are attracted to, that our sense of purpose is right now. And so we can use the Scorpio energy in a very positive way. But some people will use it in a negative way. They'll use it for rage and anger and war. There are no other really huge events happening next year that are astrologically based. The only ones would be eclipses that are happening that will be conjunct the United States moon in Aquarius from its natal chart. Remember, the one in August was in the opposite sign of the United States natal moon in Aquarius, and that touched off Trump and a lot of his natal planets like Mars in Leo. So it's almost like that's the opposite of the Aquarius moon the United States has. That Aquarius moon is some of the values that the United States started with, like equality, diversity and unity, freedom. That's what we need to come back to, is those values. And the eclipse challenged those values. Now, as we get into February, when there's going to be an eclipse that's going to be conjunct, I believe it's a solar eclipse, going to be conjunct the United States moon in Aquarius. That's going to be a good time for the people to fight back. And people will fight back at that time. So that's what we can look forward to in 2018. I also think that there might be a large stock market falling down in 2018, and our economy being transformed, the beginnings of it. We're moving more toward socialism, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to have a world, is by sharing the wealth. Like, for instance, health programs. When you look at like Medicare, that's socialism. So it's not like everything is socialism. It's just the things that become socialism are the ones that will help us to make sure that everyone is taken care of on this earth. So Bernie Sanders was like a leading voice for where we're headed. So when you see the economy going down this coming year, keep your vision of where we're headed, not on what temporarily is going to happen. There's a military-industrial complex that runs the United States and much of the world. And that military, remember I told you before, the military police are going to get stronger. The industrial has turned into the economic, not just industrial. And that's about this economy, that's unfair economy that runs much of the world and certainly our country. Our country is going through a huge transformation now. That eclipse traveling across the United States was a message that it's the United States that has the transformative energy coming to it. After that eclipse in February, that's conjunct the United States natal moon, we then move into a time where the United States Pluto in its second house, which is economy, second house, power, Pluto, that will be aspected by Saturn conjunct it, and by Pluto having its first return to itself since 1776. And that'll be in the early 2020s, those two events. So, or 1920. That second one, Pluto returns like 2022, 23. So we can expect more powerful transformation of the United States and of its military-industrial complex over the next few years. We, as individuals, are going to get all sorts of help, just as we've been getting help, to transform ourselves, to become what we want the change to be a part of and represent what the age of Aquarius is and will be. It's truth and love must lead our way. And each one of us can do it when transformation comes, and you can see that with Uranus, Neptune, Pluto to your natal chart. That means that old programming from the state, from the nation, from society, and from our families who are unknowing ambassadors of an old world oftentimes. We can let go, release that old programming. As we release that old programming, we get a temporary feeling of lack of security. But then we also get a burst of energy for the authentic world that we'll be creating in contribution to the world we're moving into. So each one of you, there are dark times sometimes, and a lot of you have gone through a lot of those dark times already. The dark times are because you're letting go of the old, releasing the old. And that's followed by a birth where there's light coming in. And that is where we're all headed, toward that light of the new age. And each one of us individually must allow the transformation when it's time to have us release that which is not right for us anymore, that's part of the old age, that's in our minds, our belief systems, and in the things that we are doing and holding on to in our world. So the transformational energies are going to get stronger for each one of us and for the United States. And I can tell you that we are headed to a brand new world, to an age of Aquarius. So keep that vision. That vision will make everything work right, and keep the love and keep the truth. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you before too long.